welcome to the 107th edition of Marex Maritime News. The headlines on Monday, 28th of February 2022. Antitrust violations during pandemic lead to multilateral probe. European countries seek direct shipping route to Bangladesh. Tanker stocks warming up. Skuld request members to follow risk mitigation measures when sailing on ice. Can future of container shipping be nuclear electric power? The clamor from global forwarder and shipper organizations about incompetitive behavior by carriers has gotten so loud that 5 competition authorities, including the US Department of Justice, have established a working group that will meet regularly to share intelligence and coordinate investigations of suspected antitrust violations. Many buyers of ocean transportation say the carriers have manipulated tight capacity during the pandemic through deferred and cancelled sailings and other measures to drive rates up, resulting in record profits estimated to top $200 billion last year. The vista of direct container shipping from Bangladesh's Chittagong port to Europe seems to be expanding, with at least 2 more European countries expressing interest in directly transporting goods by sea from Chattogram. After an Italian firm launched such services this month, Portugal and Slovenia have also shown interest to follow suit. Will this interest have an impact on India? The stock market indices are all down, but the tanker stocks are up. Conventional wisdom has it that disruption, however you define it, is good for the share prices of listed tanker companies.
Tanker stocks. Major geopolitical events with tragic human costs have major effects on shipping rates, sometimes negative. This report comes at an awkward time. What with the special military operation in Eastern Europe? It remains to be seen how developments will affect our industry, with sanctions already being imposed on Russia, ports closing in the area inter alia. Although freight rates may seem a quicker effect from this geopolitical agitation, it is certainly too soon to see any disruption to the levels of activity in the second-hand segment. Sales reports portray a potpourri of purchases. Shipping routes and commodity trade will be impacted in case the situation in Eastern Europe persists, which can in turn have a bearing on asset values and player sentiment. Naturally, we all want to know what might be the impact of Putin's actions on shipping, but without knowing his game plan, we cannot estimate the scope and duration of the potential disruption. Suffice to say that seaborne trade is fungible, and Russia is a major producer, processor, and exporter of oil, gas, metals, minerals, grains, fertilizers, and forestry. Coming out of the Black Sea over the last few days, vessels were being hit by shells, including the small Moldova-flagged bunkering tanker Millennial Spirit, which we understand was it. Currently, there are 34 tankers, including 81 coastal units, trapped around the mouth of the Azov Sea. Tanker rates shoot up overnight, especially in the Aframax sector, where they have increased by over $100,000 per day. VLCC rates continue to rise, and Suezmax rates have increased from $0 to $11,000 on an average per day. We have bunker rates hit an all-time high, with today's VLSFO prices at the world's top 4 bunkering hubs averaging $741 per ton. Aframaxes have led the way this week on the sale and purchase front, with only 2 reported sales this week, both being Aframaxes. GMS reportedly bought the Mastera 106,000 2003 build for an undisclosed price, and Aquanas 109,000 deadweight 2006 built in China has been sold to undisclosed buyers. War is a bad thing except for shipping. I learned in all the years that shipping survives on calamities. I don't know if it's true today. 5 LNG carriers were ordered in February 2022 at a price of $208.9 at Samsung for delivery spread between March and September 25, and a similar size for delivery August 24 at Hyundai at $217.4 ordered to Hyundai Glovis. This was the first new build LNG carrier. Clarkson's new build price index stood at 155 this week, up 19% year on year, while the guideline for new build price of 174,000 cubic meter LNG carrier stood at $218 million, which is up 16% year on year. Stock markets dropped and energy prices jumped last week on Thursday following events in Ukraine, whilst the price of Brent crude rose above $105 a barrel for the first time since 2014. European gas prices surged by over 40%. Major economies have since announced a range of sanctions on Russian individuals, banks and companies, including shipowners, while Germany suspended the approval of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline earlier in the week. With sanctions so far not targeting Russia's energy exports or the country's access to the SWIFT payment system, which is very much on the cards and can happen any time now. While significant uncertainty remains, a range of economic impacts are possible in the short term, including on global investor sentiment, regional economies, inflation, and global seaborne trade. Some buyers of Russian crude were reportedly struggling to open letters of credit from Western banks to cover purchases on Thursday, amid significant uncertainty following developments in Ukraine. The US imposed blocking sanctions on 2 state-owned Russian banks. Sanctions were also announced by the EU, UK and Japan. The US sanctioned Sberbank and VTB, Russia's top 2 lenders. Future sanctions could theoretically target Russian energy exports. Russia's oil and gas exports would be firmly in the firing line of any sanctions, given that they are the lifeblood of Russia's economy, accounting for around 40% of Russia's revenues. Russian entities that have been put on the blacklist are Gazprom, Rosneft, Novatek and others that are on the sectoral sanctions identification list. VLCC tanker fleet growth in the year and million deadweight, size 200,000 plus. In 2018 was 227.7 million deadweight, 2019 247.4 million deadweight, 2020 256.5 million deadweight, and on 1st February 22 262.4 million deadweight. Trends show longer haul oil trade to replace Russian volumes, shorter haul LNG trade as cargoes are diverted from Asia to Europe. Much of the owning community has taken a step back from fixing to watch events unfold and where the market will settle in the coming week. Some charters have persisted and came into the market, but reached difficulty as the owners who are working are asking for ever-increasing numbers. Something to consider is whether concessions will be made regarding sanctions on Iran in order to relieve some of the energy concerns that are permeating the market. There was limited activity to report in the tanker sale and purchase market this week. In the Suez Max sector, clients of Viken Shipping sold Korean-built Herviken 152,000 built 2004 to Greek interests for a price in the region of $15 million. Basis surveys due towards the end of the year. In recent weeks, the Kaveri Spirit 159,000 built 2004 was sold at a price of $15 billion. Basis surveys promptly due. In the product tanker sector, Norden's clients sold the Nord Snow Queen 38,000 2008 build to undisclosed buyers for a price in the region of $9.5 million. For comparison, clients of Hafnia recently sold the older Japanese-built Hafnia Karawa 39,900 built 2007 for $9 million. Oil tanker stocks with most momentum were seen as Capital Product Partners' price of $16 per share showed 12 months total return of 85%. TK LNG Partners showed a return of 47.4% with a price of stock at $17. SFL Corporation Limited showed a return of 33.6% for a stock price of 8.38. As with other tanker markets, what happened before Europe woke last Thursday seemed irrelevant, and now there has been a complete standoff and it is possible to count the fixtures concluded on one hand. At the start of the week, North Sea was hit by a number of large storms causing delays and need for replacement ships. This meant that owners were able to put pressure on the rates, achieving World Scale 100 for a West Coast Norway to UK continent run. Yet some in the Baltic have found increased resistance. We have seen a prompt replacement done at World Scale 200 for a Baltic UK continent option with short discharge options into the Baltic. We need to see what happens over the next couple of days. However, in the short term, this firm market, especially for any calls in Russia, will demand a very large premium. Now the Baltic has firmed, giving courage to other Aframax markets. Certain flags were asking ships not to call Ukraine or Russia, leaving uncertainty for Black Sea loadings, especially those from CPC, Novorossiysk and Kavkaz. Next to be done will most likely be more, but the longevity of a world in which Russian energy is no longer traded must surely shrink demand, accentuating Aframax oversupply. A few ships in the dirty market were picked off, with the market ticking along close to bottom levels. Eyes on the sanctions and who will still be calling Russian ports, but with sharp increases in Aframax levels, handy owners will be hopeful to get involved in some broken Aframax stems. All eyes will be on Aframaxes in the coming weeks as they will likely be directly affected. Period market, no comment is a comment. It's hard to comment on this right now and even harder to try and rate it, with the shipping world in stalemate limbo as we wait for news of the expected sanctions and its results. We struggle to assess where values could be. Owners are holding back from any time charter cover until the lay of the land is better known. Second-hand tankers sold. The Sea Lynx 318,000 built 2004 was sold last month for a region of $33 million. In the product sphere, the Nord Snow Queen 38,000 built 2008 was sold for circa $9.5 million, and the tanker Sky 37,800 built 2007 was committed for levels in the low $8 million. Shipping is sitting at the center of a global disruption event, and we hope our data will help frame some of the huge uncertainty. At the time of making this report, we hear Ukrainian delegation was heading to Belarus for talks after Moscow's threat ultimatum. We hope no more lives will be lost after these talks. Stop press news was Putin orders military command to put nuclear deterrence forces on high alert.
can damage a ship's hull, rudder, propeller, or other structures. Ice-infested waters are more challenging to non-ice class or non-polar class ships which rely on icebreaker ships and weather forecast when calling at such areas. There is an increase of propeller damage mostly between December and March. Skuld advises its members to follow all risk mitigating procedures when sailing in ice. Ships navigating the ice waters are at risk of incurring liabilities arising from physical risk to the ship and crew of extreme weather, cold, and ice conditions. Contact with ice floes and icebergs, ice accretion, restricted visibility, and operational malfunctions due to cold can all potentially contribute to cause delays and damage to the ship, her crew, and cargo. The physical risks are aggravated by infrastructure risk of poor communications, incomplete charting in some areas, unreliable navigational aids, and potential remoteness from all sources of help when an incident happens, including remoteness from salvage and cleanup facilities, search and rescue, medical assistance, surveyors, club correspondence, bunkering facilities, etc. Third, there are enhanced human element risk if the officers and crew lack the training and experience to address the difficulties noted above. Can future of container shipping be nuclear electric power?
It is just not economically feasible for commercial ships to be nuclear powered. Construction of a nuclear powered vessel is insanely expensive. The ship cannot make enough money over the course of core life to pay for the core. The other costs of operations, such as outrageously expensive nuclear trained crew, which is of utmost necessity, and still make enough money to make such a risk worthwhile, is just not feasible. Nuclear power's major advantage for a warship is its range. Nuclear warships can cruise indefinitely without calling a port for fuel. Commercial ships, even the ones that cross oceans, are necessarily in port every couple of weeks to deliver their products. The more deliveries they make, the better, and they fuel when they deliver. So, range is not a factor for commercial ships. It's just not necessary for any commercial ship to carry any more fuel than it takes to cross the longest range, example, the Pacific Ocean. Further, a reactor requires a lot of shielding, which adds weight and reduces payload. And add the cost of the reactor to this, we know why we don't see nuclear powered cargo ships. As far as the regulatory concerns, there is a structure in place, at least in America, for the Nuclear Energy Commission to regulate civilian operated power plants, much like commercial nuclear power generation plants. And there are plenty of qualified operators out there, ex Navy, and are very well trained for the task. But these experts will not come cheap and will demand a premium for their skills. Not to mention, the nuclear crew will be largely in addition to the very small crew that normally mans a container vessel. Plus, the advantages offered by nuclear power just aren't necessary for commercial ships, so you'll be spending a ton of extra money for no tangible benefit. Unless, for some reason, you wanted a ridiculously fast, gigantic container ship that never had to fuel. It just doesn't make sense to do it that way.
Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you for watching. See you next Monday.